2 years into my relationship with Natalie, we had been discussing the possibility of moving in together for months. We were at a comfortable place in our relationship, or so I thought. Then one evening, out of the blue, she casually announced, "I am moving in with my male best friend Jason for financial reasons." The shock hit me like a tidal wave. But externally, I remained calm and replied, "That works out perfectly." Her face registered confusion, uncertainty, and maybe a hint of disappointment. If you are watching this from a place where trust was broken, drop your location in the comments and hit subscribe as I reveal what happened next in this relationship-altering moment. My name is Paul, a 27-year-old software developer living in Seattle. I first met Natalie at my college friend Tyler's birthday party 2 years ago. She was standing near the drinks table laughing at something on her phone, her curly brown hair falling over one shoulder. There was something magnetic about her presence that drew me in immediately. "That must be a really funny text," I said, approaching, with 2 cups of punch in hand. I offered her one, which she accepted with a smile. "Just my friend, sending me terrible dad jokes," she replied. "I am Natalie, by the way." "Paul." I introduced myself. From that moment, conversation flowed effortlessly between us. Natalie worked as a marketing specialist for a local startup. We discovered we both loved hiking the Pacific Northwest trails, had the same taste in obscure indie films, and shared a passion for Thai food. By the end of the night, I had her number and a first date planned for the following weekend. Our relationship progressed naturally from there. Natalie was intelligent, ambitious, and had a laugh that could brighten my darkest days. We complemented each other well, my analytical nature balancing her creative spirit. Within 6 months, we were officially a couple, spending most weekends together and planning short getaways to nearby coastal towns. It was around our 3rd date when I first heard about Jason. Natalie mentioned him, casually describing him as her best friend from college. They had met in freshman year communications class and had been inseparable since. I did not think much of it at the time, happy that Natalie had close friendships. I met Jason about a month into our relationship at a small gathering at Natalie's apartment. He was tall, athletically built, with an easy smile and charismatic personality. He greeted me with a firm handshake and seemingly genuine interest in getting to know me. Throughout the evening, I noticed the comfortable dynamic between him and Natalie, full of inside jokes and shared memories. Initially, I was completely comfortable with their friendship. I had female friends of my own and believed men and women could maintain platonic relationships. But as time passed, I began noticing patterns that occasionally made me uneasy. Jason texted Natalie constantly. During our dates, her phone would light up with his messages, sometimes several times an hour. They had lunch together at least twice a week since they worked in nearby buildings. When Natalie and I were with friends, Jason would often dominate her attention with references to people or events I knew nothing about. "Jason and I have this inside joke from sophomore year," she would explain, noticing my confusion but rarely elaborating further. Despite my growing discomfort, I tried to be understanding. Natalie assured me they were just friends, and I wanted to trust her. I did not want to be the jealous, controlling boyfriend who came between longtime friends. By our 1.5-year mark, our relationship had reached a comfortable stability. We had keys to each other's apartments and kept toiletries and spare clothes at each place. The natural next step seemed to be moving in together. My lease was ending in 3 months, and the topic began entering our conversations. "What do you think about us looking for a place together when your lease is up?" I asked one night as we were cooking dinner in my kitchen. Natalie paused while chopping vegetables. "That is a big step," she said carefully. "We practically live together already," I pointed out, "and it would save us both money." She nodded slowly. "Let me think about it. I do like the idea, but the timing with my work is a bit complicated right now." Over the next few weeks, I started casually looking at 2-bedroom apartments in neighborhoods we both liked. Natalie seemed to engage with the idea, sometimes sending me listings she found online, though she never committed fully to the plan. I attributed her hesitation to the significant step it represented in our relationship. Around this time, Natalie went through a career transition. The startup she worked for underwent restructuring, and her role changed, bringing new pressures and slightly lower pay. She mentioned being concerned about finances a few times, but I assured her that if we moved in together, we could work out an arrangement that accommodated her temporary situation. We can split rent proportionate to our incomes, I suggested, and reevaluate in 6 months, when you are more settled in your new position. These practical solutions seemed to ease her mind, and I thought we were on the same page about our future. Looking back, I should have noticed the subtle shifts in Natalie's behavior during those weeks. She began spending more time with Jason, often meeting him after work for drinks to decompress from her stressful day. When I would ask about these gatherings, she would become slightly defensive. "He is just being supportive during my work transition," she would say, her tone suggesting I should drop the subject. Plans we made as a couple were increasingly postponed or canceled last minute. Twice I made dinner reservations that Natalie asked to reschedule because something came up with Jason or Jason needs help with a project. I tried to be patient, reminding myself that her career was in flux and that Jason was an established part of her support system. The week before Natalie's announcement, I noticed she seemed particularly distant. Our text conversations became shorter, she was less affectionate, and twice she canceled our regular weekend plans. I was concerned but also busy preparing to officially propose the idea of moving in together. I had found the perfect apartment, a spacious 2-bedroom in a neighborhood halfway between both our workplaces with a small balcony. Perfect for the herb garden Natalie had always wanted to start. I planned to show her the listing over dinner that Friday, hoping to finally get a definitive answer about our living situation. Little did I know Natalie had plans of her own that would change everything between us. I had prepared a special dinner at my apartment, complete with Natalie's favorite pasta dish and a bottle of the Pinot Noir we had discovered on our trip to Oregon wine country. The table was set, candles lit, and I had pulled up the apartment listing on my laptop to show her after dinner. I was nervous but excited, imagining our future together in our shared home. Natalie arrived looking distracted. She kissed me quickly on the cheek, a departure from our usual warm greetings, and immediately poured herself a generous glass of wine. "Rough day?" I asked, serving the pasta. "Not really, just a lot on my mind," she replied vaguely. We made small talk about our work weeks as we ate. I was just about to bring up the apartment when Natalie put down her fork and, with the casual air of someone mentioning a change in weather, said, "By the way, I am moving in with Jason next month. My rent is going up and it makes financial sense." The statement hit me like a physical blow. I felt my stomach drop and my hand freeze midway to my glass. Somehow I managed to keep my expression neutral as 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Had I misunderstood our entire relationship? Had she been planning this all along? Was there more between her and Jason than friendship? Despite the chaos in my mind, I simply nodded and replied, "That works out perfectly." The look on Natalie's face was a mixture of confusion and what seemed like disappointment. Clearly, she had expected a different reaction, perhaps anger or jealousy, that would confirm some narrative she had constructed in her mind. "You are not upset?" she asked tentatively. I took a slow sip of wine before answering. "Why would I be upset about you making practical financial decisions?" My voice was steady, betraying none of the hurt and shock I felt. Natalie launched into an explanation, words tumbling out quickly. "Jason just got this great 2-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill. The rent is actually less than what I am paying now for my studio, and we would split utilities. It just makes sense while I figure out my finances with the new position." "I see," I said evenly. "How long have you been planning this?" "It is not really planning," she said, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "It just came up recently when Jason mentioned he was looking for a place. It is just temporary until I figure things out. Just temporary," I repeated. "And when were you going to tell me about this temporary arrangement? When you were packing, or after you had already moved in?" "I am telling you now," she said, bristling. "I do not understand why you are making this into a big deal. It is just a living situation. It has nothing to do with us. A living situation that you decided on without even discussing it with me, I pointed out. Despite knowing that we have been talking about moving in together for months. Despite knowing my lease is ending soon and I have been actively looking at apartments for us. The conversation quickly evolved into a subtle argument. Natalie insisted she had not committed to moving in with me, that it was just something we had discussed in passing. I reminded her of the apartment listings she had sent me, the conversations we had about furniture we would need, even the discussion about how to divide expenses. Those were hypothetical discussions, she claimed, her voice rising slightly. I never actually said yes. And you never actually said no either, I countered. You let me believe we were moving in that direction. You participated in those plans. As the tension grew, I realized I needed time to process this revelation and my feelings about it. The evening was not going as I had planned, and I felt too hurt and confused to continue the conversation productively. I think I need some time to think about this, I said finally. This is a lot to process. Natalie seemed both relieved and upset by my suggestion. She gathered her purse and jacket, pausing at the door. I hope you understand this is just practical, she said. It does not change anything between us. But as I closed the door behind her, I knew everything had already changed. Alone in my apartment, I cycled through a range of emotions. Initial shock gave way to anger, then deep disappointment. I had been imagining our future together while she had been making plans with another man, plans that excluded me entirely. I poured another glass of wine and found myself scrolling through our recent text messages, looking for signs I had missed. About 3 weeks back, I noticed a message from Natalie mentioning she would be checking out some places with a friend on a Saturday when I was visiting my parents. At the time, I had assumed she meant female friends looking at shops or cafes. Driven by a growing suspicion, I opened our shared photo album, where we kept pictures of potential apartments. The last entry was from over a month ago, when Natalie had enthusiastically shared a listing with perfect light for my plants. Since then, silence on the apartment front from her end, though I had continued adding options. The most damning evidence came from social media. In a moment of weakness, I looked at Jason's Instagram story from 2 weeks prior, something I rarely checked. There was a quick video of Natalie standing in an empty apartment, gesturing excitedly at a kitchen island with the caption, "Checking out the new place with the future roomie." The realization that this was not a sudden decision, but something they had been planning for weeks while I remained oblivious, felt like a betrayal deeper than I had initially understood. This was not a practical financial decision made in haste, but a deliberate choice Natalie had made. Knowing full well we had been discussing living together. As I sat in my dimly lit apartment surrounded by the remnants of the romantic dinner I had prepared, I came to a difficult decision. I deserved honesty in my relationship. I deserved to be consulted on major decisions that affected us both. And most importantly, I deserved to be with someone who truly wanted to build a future with me, not someone who made significant life changes and treated me as an afterthought. With newfound clarity and resolve, I decided to confront the situation directly the following day. No more assumptions, no more letting things slide to avoid conflict. It was time for an honest conversation about our relationship and where we stood with each other. The next morning, I texted Natalie, asking if she could come over that evening to talk. Her response was quick but wary. "Sure, everything okay?" I simply replied that we needed to discuss some things in person. I spent the day organizing my thoughts, determined to approach the conversation calmly but honestly. I cleaned my apartment, removing the remnants of our interrupted dinner from the night before. I wanted a fresh, neutral space for our conversation. As the hours passed, I rehearsed what I wanted to say, focusing on expressing my feelings without accusation while still being direct about my concerns. When Natalie arrived at 7, she seemed guarded. She declined my offer of tea or wine, preferring to just get to the conversation. We sat in my living room, an unusual formality between us that underscored the tension. "I have been thinking a lot about what you told me yesterday." I began, keeping my voice measured. about moving in with Jason, and I realize there are some things I need to say. Natalie nodded, her posture stiff. I figured that is what this was about. First, I want to be clear that I respect your right to make your own decisions, I said. But I am hurt that you made such a significant decision without even consulting me, especially knowing we had been discussing living together for months. I told you it is just a practical arrangement, Natalie interjected. You are making this into something it is not. Am I? I asked. Because from my perspective, this is about more than just living arrangements. This is about communication and respect in our relationship. It is about the fact that you and Jason have apparently been apartment hunting for weeks while I was planning our future together. Her eyes widened slightly. What do you mean I saw Jason's Instagram story from 2 weeks ago? You were touring the apartment with him. You have been planning this for a while, Natalie. Why hide it from me? If it is just a practical arrangement between friends. A flash of guilt crossed her face before she recovered. I did not hide it. I just did not think it was a big deal. You are overreacting, Paul. Jason and I are just friends. This is not about whether you and Jason are just friends. I replied, though the thought had certainly crossed my mind. This is about you making major life decisions without including me in the conversation. It is about you knowing I was actively looking for a place for us, while you were making different plans. I never officially agreed to move in with you, she said defensively. We were just talking about possibilities. Which is exactly my point, I said, feeling my frustration rise. We were talking, communicating. Something you completely failed to do about your plans with Jason. The conversation began to escalate, with Natalie becoming increasingly defensive. She accused me of being jealous of her friendship with Jason, of trying to control her decisions, of not being supportive during her financial struggles. If you were really concerned about finances, why did not you discuss moving in with me earlier? I asked. I offered to work out a financial arrangement that would accommodate your situation, but instead you made plans with Jason behind my back. That statement seemed to hit a nerve. Natalie fell silent for a moment before saying, It is different with Jason. Different how I pressed. It is just, I do not know, less pressure, she admitted. Moving in with you feels like such a big step in our relationship. With Jason, it is just a roommate situation. And there it was, the truth I had suspected but hoped was not the case. Natalie was not ready for the commitment that moving in with me represented. Yet she was comfortable enough to live with another man, one who happened to be her best friend, one who was constantly present in her life, one who she increasingly prioritized over me. So you are not ready to commit to living with me, but you are ready to live with Jason. I summarized, the hurt evident in my voice despite my attempts to remain calm. It is not the same thing, she insisted. Living with you means something different. Exactly, I said quietly. And the fact that you made this decision knowing what it would mean to me without even having the respect to discuss it first tells me everything I need to know about where I stand in your life. As our conversation continued, Natalie's explanations became increasingly contradictory. She claimed she valued our relationship deeply while simultaneously admitting she had been uncertain about our future. She insisted her decision was purely financial, while acknowledging she had not considered the option of living with me to solve those same financial issues. Finally, after nearly an hour of circular discussion, I knew it was time to say what I had been building toward, the realization I had come to during my night alone. Natalie, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I deserve someone who includes me in major life decisions. I deserve someone who considers my feelings and respects me enough to have difficult conversations, instead of presenting me with decisions already made. Your actions show I am not a priority in your life, and I will not be a backup option while you explore possibilities with Jason or anyone else. She began to protest, but I continued. This is not just about living arrangements. It is about respect and honesty. It is about building a partnership where both people matter. And right now, it is clear that is not what we have. What are you saying? she asked, her voice small. I am saying I think we should take a step back from this relationship. I need to be with someone who values me enough to include me in their future, not someone who makes plans that exclude me and only tells me after the fact. The impact of my words was immediate and visible. Natalie's expression crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. Are you breaking up with me? I am acknowledging what you have already done, I replied gently. Your decision made it clear where I stand in your priorities. I am just putting it into words. Natalie began crying in earnest. Then a reaction that surprised me given her previous defensiveness. Through tears, she tried to backtrack, saying she could tell Jason she changed her mind, that she would reconsider moving in with me, that she had made a mistake. But I knew it was too late. The trust had been broken, not just by her decision to move in with Jason, but by the weeks of planning behind my back, the lack of consideration for our relationship, and the realization that she simply was not as invested in our future as I was. I think you should go, I said finally. You need to think about what you really want, and so do I. Still crying, Natalie gathered the few belongings she kept at my place. A toothbrush, some clothing, a phone charger, small artifacts of a relationship I had thought was heading toward permanence. She paused at the door, mascara streaked down her cheeks. I never meant to hurt you, she said. I know, I replied. But you did. And that says something important about us. With that, she left, closing the door softly behind her. I stood alone in my apartment, feeling a strange mixture of pain and relief. The relationship I had invested 2 years in was effectively over, but for the first time in weeks, I felt clarity about my worth and what I deserved in a partnership. The week following our confrontation was one of the hardest I had experienced. Natalie texted multiple times, alternating between apologies, justifications, and pleas to talk again. I maintained my distance, needing space to process my feelings and stand firm in my decision. Friends who knew us both confirmed what I had suspected would happen. Natalie moved in with Jason as planned. Tyler, our mutual friend, called to check on me. She really went through with it, he said, sounding surprised. I thought she might change her mind after your talk. Some decisions reveal priorities, I replied simply. Despite my outward certainty, I struggled with doubt in private moments. Had I overreacted? Was I throwing away a 2-year relationship over something that could have been worked through? Was I letting insecurity cloud my judgment? These questions haunted me as I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects to fill the sudden emptiness of evenings that used to be spent with Natalie. I reestablished connections with friends I had seen less frequently during my relationship, grateful for their support and the distraction they provided from my heartache. 2 weeks after our confrontation, Natalie asked if we could meet for coffee. Against my better judgment, I agreed, curious about what she wanted to say and perhaps still harboring a small hope that I had misunderstood the situation. We met at a neutral coffee shop downtown, far from our usual haunts. Natalie looked tired. The usual brightness in her eyes dimmed. After awkward small talk, she finally came to the point. I need to be honest with you, she said, staring into her untouched latte. I have had feelings for Jason for a while. I did not want to admit it to myself, let alone to you. Moving in with him was partly about those feelings, about exploring what might be possible between us. Though I had suspected as much, hearing her confirm, it still felt like a physical blow. Thank you for finally being honest, I managed to say. For what it is worth, you were right about everything, she continued. I should have talked to you. I should have been up front. I was a coward, and I hurt you. I am truly sorry for that. We talked for another hour, a more honest conversation than we had managed in months. By the end, we had officially ended our relationship with a clarity and mutual understanding that had been missing from our confrontation. Though painful, there was a certain relief in the truth finally being spoken. The weeks that followed were a blur of grief and slow rebuilding. I immersed myself in work, reconnected with old hobbies I had neglected, and spent more time with friends who reminded me of who I was outside of my relationship with Natalie. Loneliness hit hardest in the quiet moments on Sunday mornings, when we would have been making breakfast together, or in the evenings when I would instinctively reach for my phone to share something funny or interesting with her. But gradually those moments became less frequent, the sharp pain of loss dulling to a manageable ache. 3 months after our breakup, my lease ended as originally planned. The irony was not lost on me as I packed up the apartment where I had imagined beginning a new chapter with Natalie. Instead, I was beginning a new chapter alone. I found a one-bedroom place in a neighborhood I had always liked, but Natalie had found too noisy. It was smaller than the apartments I had been looking at for us, but it was entirely mine, a space where every decision reflected my preferences and needs. I painted the walls a deep blue that Natalie would have vetoed, bought the slightly impractical but comfortable sectional sofa I had always wanted, and set up my records and books exactly as I pleased. Creating this space that was uniquely mine became an unexpectedly healing process. Each choice I made reinforced that I was moving forward, building a life that honored what I wanted and needed. 6 months after our breakup, I heard through Tyler that Natalie and Jason's relationship had imploded spectacularly. Apparently, the reality of living together had quickly eroded whatever romantic notions they had harbored. The friendship that had seemed so unshakable had crumbled under the weight of romantic expectations and the practical stresses of sharing a living space. "She asked for your number," Tyler mentioned casually. "Said she has been thinking about you, about how things ended." I considered this information carefully. A part of me, the part that still occasionally missed her laugh, or the way she could guess what I was thinking, felt a pull toward reconnection. But the stronger part, the part that had grown through the pain of our breakup, knew better. "Tell her I wish her well," I said to Tyler, "but I am not interested in going backward." Shortly after, Natalie emailed me directly a long message full of apologies and reflections on her mistakes. She mentioned how she now understood what she had thrown away and asked if we could meet to talk. With kindness but firmness, I declined, explaining that while I had forgiven her reopening, that chapter would not be healthy for either of us. By the 1-year mark after our breakup, I had gained a new understanding of what I wanted in a relationship. The experience with Natalie had taught me to value clear communication, to recognize the importance of being included in a partner's vision of the future, and to pay attention to actions rather than words. I had started dating again casually, at first approaching new connections with both openness and a healthy caution. I was more direct about my expectations and more attuned to inconsistencies between what someone said and what they did. 6 months later, I met Amanda at a work conference. Unlike the immediate chemistry I had felt with Natalie, my connection with Amanda, built slowly through thoughtful conversations and shared experiences. She was straightforward about her feelings and included me in her decision-making process, even for small things, in a way that I now recognized as respect rather than dependency. When Amanda got an offer for her dream job in Portland and asked me how I felt about long distance or possibly relocating in the future, the contrast with Natalie's approach could not have been clearer. Here was someone who saw me as an integral part of her decision-making process, who valued my place in her life enough to have difficult conversations before making major decisions. As I reflect now on that painful period of my life, I can recognize the growth it forced upon me. Learning to stand up for what I deserved in a relationship was a difficult but necessary lesson. The night I told Natalie I deserved better might have left us both in tears, but it was the first step toward the authentic life I needed. I learned that sometimes walking away is an act of self-respect. I learned that honesty, even when painful, is kinder than comfortable half-truths. I learned to recognize warning signs earlier, and to trust my instincts when something feels wrong. And perhaps most importantly, I learned that being vulnerable enough to express hurt and set boundaries is not weakness, but strength. That experience, painful as it was, led me to where I am today in a relationship built on mutual respect and honest communication, creating a life that feels authentic and fulfilling. Sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most necessary beginnings. Have you ever had to walk away from a relationship where you were not being valued? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating relationships with honesty and self-respect. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that you always deserve to be someone's priority, not their afterthought. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you, but by how you allow yourself to be treated.